to having access to one's own resources, without having to answer anyone. So I'm not entirely denying that or rejecting that. But largely from my own experience, what I've realized is, to me, security comes from just feeling held by community, by family. Just simple things like when I step out of my home and I see a thriving curry leaf tree or a moringa tree, I feel so rich. I feel secure because I know that I'm not going to go hungry. It's going to feed me, and with all the medicinal herbs all around me, and having access to friends at any time that I want to just share something or take some help from, access to elders who have knowledge to share freely. And recently my mom moved in with us because of the COVID situation, and I feel so held with all her love and all the knowledge that I turn to when there's an ailment, when there is some guidance needed. So so I really look at excuse me. So I've come to look at freedom as really, being interdependent in a healthy way, where we can all have our own space for expressing our individuality, which is a healthy form of independence, that we are not codependent psychologically on others, and but truly for our living, if we can create thriving communities where we can feel held, to me that is where real security is. And I really question this whole going after independence as a way of finding security, because I think it's like it's endless. The more independent we've become with our material needs, I think the more insecurity it leads to. The less feeling of trust and togetherness, which is where really security is. And I live in Auroville, which is an experiment in exactly arriving at this nice balance of every individual living their gift without having to, and working without really having to think of money, earning for their own livelihood, for their own living, yet being and collectively creating a context, a community where everyone's needs are taken care of, so everyone feels secure, and so that they can really focus on what is their gift that they're here to live and offer. So this is the dream of Auroville. This is the vision of Auroville, which is where I am. And it is a work in progress. But I think the way forward is to really, create communities and contexts where individual self-expression can thrive with interdependence. And that is where the real wealth lies.
Thank you, Sangeeta. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Prati. Looking forward to Manish's story.
Yes. So now it's time we invite Manish Jain. So before I do that, I'll just introduce him a little, though I am sure he's not dependent on any introduction. But Manish is a co-creator of Suraj University, Jail University, Shikshantar Andolan Complexity University, LSUC, and Ecoversities Alliance. And I think the list goes on. He has an 18-year-old unschooled daughter. He likes to describe himself as unlearning trickster, beaver, weaver, defender of sacred gift culture, holder of interculture dialogue and brave spaces. He relentlessly pursues youth and parents to de-school and decolonize themselves and to tap into the wisdom of nature and our grandmothers. We welcome you, Manish, and yes, please take the floor.
Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste. It's great pleasure to be here. I have not been feeling well for the last few weeks, but just seeing all of you is giving me some energy to try to share some ideas. And I think this topic is one of the most important things that we can be talking about today in our lives. What does real wealth mean? We have been fed a lie that wealth equals money, or Lakshmi these days is money, and it goes that deep. And I think the definitions and the ways we think about things really influence how we actually live and create in the world. So just try to share some thoughts with you and some of our experiments that we've been doing to redefine the meaning of wealth. So let me start with just to build off the film a little bit. I want to start with an offer. I'm going to offer anybody in this room, on this chat, 1 crore rupees. Who's ready for that? You can put your thumbs up or something, or your whatever. 1 crore rupees. Yes, all right, Anchal, ready. Okay, Fahad. So here's the deal, 1 crore rupees. Here's what I'll put it in your account. What you have to give me is your eyeballs, your liver, your kidney, your lungs. Both Anchal and Kritika have beautiful hair, which is very sellable. And there's a huge market for all of these. Your hands, your feet, your teeth. All of these things we can sell on the open market today. So are you guys ready for that deal? Should I close it? You'll make a profit, I'll make a profit. It's a new livelihood. So nobody's ready for that deal, I think. Hopefully there's enough wisdom. But if we take this deal as a metaphor, this is exactly what we're doing. We're selling ourselves, our time, our health, to the open market. The best years, when I was, I'd say the best years of our lives, we sell into the open market. And if we extend the metaphor, what we are doing is selling. The reason we don't want to sell these things, right? There's a logic behind it, or a real sensibility, is that these are the basic organs or assets for life. Without these things, that money has no value, right? There's no way we can enjoy it. I actually have had a little problem with my eye the last 1 month, and I cannot enjoy anything. I have to tell you that very clearly. There's nothing, whatever food you give me, whatever thing I'm seeing, it's just horrible because of this this thing. So our health is without that, without these assets of living, we cannot really live, and the same thing goes for our air, our water, our soil, and these things. Without these things, if we start to destroy all of these, there is no life as well. So we are trapped in a larger monopoly-like game, which says that actually these things don't matter, and what matters is money. And I want to share with you a couple of experiences from my own life where I started to wake up to how this game works, actually. So the first one, these are little flashbacks I've to tell you I'm 51 years old now, so I'm going to take you back almost half a century. So when I was growing up, I started, I lived in the US, and since I was a kid, whenever we'd come back to India, this question of, first question that started to strike me is, how can there be such a huge difference between the rich and the poor? How many of you have ever thought about that question as children? It's like such a big thing. You see such wealth, and then you see people on the streets begging, and as a child, it's mind-boggling. So this used to trouble me a lot as a child. But as I got older, I had this unique experience. I think many of you probably, I hope, would have had this, is I started meeting and interacting with people with huge bank accounts, and at the same time with no bank accounts. Street children, tribal villagers, as well as Wall Street billionaires. And so it was a very unique experience. And what I started seeing was actually those so-called billionaires were living in more fear and with much more closed hearts than the tribal people or the villagers. And this was like mind-boggling for me. This shook me to the core. Like, how can this be? Like a person who doesn't know where I experienced this myself, a person who doesn't know where food for tomorrow will come from. Point where they may not even eat themselves today. They're offering you food. And then somebody who is, has billions, enough for the next, maybe 50 or 100 years of food, is so tightly holding it, so afraid to offer it to people, so fearful that they don't, and all the time living in a scarcity that they don't have enough. So this still does not make any sense to me today, but this is one of the core things I think we have to understand and ask about this game that we're living in, and why is this happening? The second experience is I went to college, but I have to admit that I usually used to go and to class only to sleep. But one of the rare occasions I was awake, I heard my economics professor telling me that, we're talking about GNP, and they said that, whenever your GNP of a country goes down, you know what the best thing you can do? Anyone guess? You can type it in there. The best thing you can do is start a war. Buy stuff is also a good thing, but even more than buy stuff is start a war. Start bombing somebody. Start the military machine up again, and that'll boost your GNP. And as we started to go deeper in this measurement of GNP, it looked more and more absurd. If this is the way the world defines its growth and its progress, if you look at this GNP, what does it say? If you actually, if people walk on the street rather than driving their cars, if they walk to the market, the GNP doesn't go up. But if they drive a car and pollute, the GNP starts to go up. If you open your window up and you let fresh air come in, your GNP doesn't go up. But if you start your AC up and again pollute, your GNP goes up. If you heal yourself without any medicines, GNP doesn't go up. But if you go to the hospital and get cancer, your GNP goes up. If you conserve your river, your GNP doesn't go up. But if you bottle all your river and sell it to Coca-Cola, your GNP goes up. So this kind of absurdity is what is actually, driving much of the indicators and much of the kind of economic system that we have. The third thing that happened to me was when I have to make a very bad confession, as I was a Wall Street investment banker. That Prachi didn't tell you, but I hope none of you hate me for that. But when I was in the Wall Street investment banker, I saw two things happen. One was that I was working in Silicon Valley, and I was working in Silicon Valley, and we had a company which was losing money. It never made a single piece of money. And they went public on the stock market, and all of a sudden, all of the people, the company was worth more than $900 million. And I was like, wait a second, this company has not produced anything. They don't have any, they're not generating anything. And all of a sudden, overnight, they're worth $900 million. Where did that come from? How did that happen? You know, and this absurdity of the money system I started questioning that. And the other extreme thing I saw was many years later, I was in Zimbabwe in 2009 when the money system crashed. And I was walking on the street and I saw billions of dollars of Zimbabwean notes. And you couldn't even buy a cup of coffee with that. And I saw the government was printing money every 3 months, billions of dollars, the inflation was going on, and you couldn't buy a cup of coffee with that. And I started looking in that, and there was nothing. If you actually look today with the global money system, there's nothing backing the money system. Tomorrow, we could have a Zimbabwe-like situation where all the money we have in the bank, and we witnessed a little bit of that in the demonetization thing. There's nothing backing that. And yet we're spending all our time running after something which has no real material value in the world. It's an abstract concept that we've created. The last thing I want to share is that when I was in the UN, I met a lot of environmentalists, and the whole thing, we started talking about the environment, and the whole economy is built on this idea of infinite growth, that we can keep growing and keep growing and keep growing. The game is built on that. And there's a saying that says you cannot have infinite growth on a finite planet. You know, and so many people, we started talking about, you know, the rate at which we are depleting things and the rate at which we are restoring things, it just doesn't add up even. You know, so we'll do little things and we'll feel good about it. Like in our city, we were promoting, for example, rainwater harvesting, but the whole mental model is more and more consumption, 24 hours of energy. Everyone has to have it. Unlimited water supply. So even where you have water storage efforts happening, the whole game pushes you into more and more consumption. So this again, this thing of we think, you know, sometimes that what we're doing is, we need to look at it. What I'm inviting us is to look at the bigger picture, that you know, it has to add up at some point. We can't think that our little efforts are there in this operating system, which is around massive depletion, massive taking away, massive consumption. And so some fundamental shifts in the game are needed, which I want to talk about is how we go there. And for my, one last thing I want to share is when I was in economics and on Wall Street, there was a saying, do you know about trickle-down theory? So trickle-down theory says that the rich people should get more and more rich, and eventually that'll filter down and everybody will become rich. And so what I saw is actually the money system is rigged. The money system is a rigged system. It's like a casino system. And it's set up not to trickle down, but to centralize. So you have, like, as Heist said the first day, you know, you have a handful of 2,000 billionaires owning more, you know, more than 70–80% now of the wealth on this planet. So they're printing money and then they're centralizing it and then they're buying up the real. We have a situation where this money is going and buying up people's rivers and people's mountains and their natural resources and all of those kinds of things. So So this is the operating system we're in, and I just want to lay it out, not with this idea of despair or but to actually say that what is the real game. What I want to talk about today is like, what is the real game we have to play. So these livelihoods we're sharing with you are a step, but we need to think about what's the direction we have to go in, because there's a much bigger game, and we don't want to get stuck. I don't want to be part of the reason I left those jobs is I said, I don't want to be a pawn in somebody else's game. And so this is why I'm trying to share. Let's try to just put out some of the parameters of the game and some of the things it's standing on. And I want to connect this to the, most of people know me here for the work on education. And I want to say that, there's three things the education system sells us on and hooks us in the system. So the first thing is that your package, you are only as worth as much as your package, or your package is a measure of your life. And, and this is what every child from childhood is engulfed in, is kind of pushed into this thing. Look at that person's package, look at that person's package. And that's who we end up in some ways respecting or valuing, even though without asking the question of where did that package come from, or how did they earn that package, and the second thing is this idea that more and more stuff is going to get you more and more happiness. The whole, when we talk about Indian wisdom, I think we talk a lot about, there's so many different things, it's so controversial, but I think the one thing I come back to Indian wisdom is people fundamentally understood that more and more stuff doesn't give you more and more happiness. And in fact, maybe they understood something even more profound, that less is more, and so I think that, but the education system somehow keeps promoting this, and it's promoting it in a way that is built on, a kind of emptiness, because we're not allowed to really work on what intrinsically motivates us. Everything is reward and punishment driven, extrinsic. You do this, you'll get this prize, or you don't do this, you'll be punished. And so there's a kind of emptiness which feeds very nicely into consumerism. And then the other thing is the competition, continuously being forced in a model of competition. So, I question a lot of people who say we want to put values and value education in the education system. I said, there already values are there. The values are competition, greed, being number one. This is the value system that drives the whole thing. And whatever you put in, you can say all the nice words, but everyone knows what the game is in the school system, like who gets valued and how it gets valued. And the third thing I think I want to say is that the education system teaches us is life is a commodity. Human beings are human resources. Nature is a resource. And this is somehow, learning is a commodity. You have to pay. Never in the history before the modern schooling system, never in the history of humanity, did people have to pay for learning. There was a business. Now very clearly the World Bank and many people say, oh, the business of education. So even something that's so profound to our human evolution has been turned into a business, has been turned into a commodity. So I think this idea again that life is a commodity is something that the education system has put into us, and that we need to step out of if we want to find a different game, make a different game, get out of the mess that we've created. So I just want to share a few experiments that we've been involved in. For me, the most important people in my unlearning journey have been my grandmother and many tribal communities in Rajasthan where I've spent time. And yesterday, Rajender Bhai was really encouraging us to go and connect to indigenous wisdom and things. So I would also invite you. And so I would like to, think that, there's three areas which I would like to kind of touch on where we can really start practical experiments. So one is with ourselves. The second is with building a community. And the third is reimagining education. So with ourselves, I think the first thing, at least for me, which was a very difficult and painful process, was, as I mentioned, my own value as a person had become so tied to the money system, and I remember, and it runs so deep. And even now, sometimes my mother calls me up and says, "Oh, your friend just sold his company and he made, $100 million. And what are you doing?" And I used to get so triggered from that. I used to get so triggered with it. And I started looking at that, and I started then how deep this is, and I need to do more work to pull this out, that my worth as a human being has nothing to do with the money system and how much I make. So I think that's the first invitation, is to start to think about how do we start to value ourselves differently. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, really, with my grandmother, one of the things I saw is really, and this is very much in the Jain tradition, is there's a very active discourse of setting limits. So we would talk about, okay, I have one grandmother would say, in a day I'm only going to eat 5 items, or in a year I'm only going to buy 1 sari, or or in a year I'm only going to take 2 trips, or something like that. So a kind of a personal thing, and as a challenge. And I used to think, oh, this is so dumb. This is like, you're denying yourself pleasure and things. And then, as I was saying, this less is more is so profound, that actually those few things that you do, actually you enjoy them way, way more than doing 1,000 different things. And so this discourse of, can we start to come out of this consumeristic mindset? We need more and more and more to be happy, but actually with a few things, limiting them, we can actually start to enjoy more and more of life. And with that, when you're about to buy something, or thinking, and really asking the question, do I really need this? Is this going to really make me happy, or can I do without it? Or can I substitute it? Or can I make something in its place that will give me more joy? The third thing, as a experience on the self, we organized something called the Cycle Yatra. I hope some of you have heard of that. And this my first yatra was so beautiful when, actually I did my first yatra alone. I was in in Eritrea in Africa. And the banks were all closed, and I didn't have a choice. I was with my friend, and we had to get back to Ethiopia. So we did a hitchhiking yatra, and without any money, and several days we traveled, and it was one of the most magical and beautiful experiences. And I got to experience the gift culture at that point. So that there is actually another kind of economy that works, nature's economy, the economy of love, the economy of care, which still is alive. And as we kind of do these experiments where we try to say, okay, let's try for a week without any money. What's going to happen if we go out and just put ourselves, the Cycle Yatra, we travel for a week without money together in Swaraj University, and experience that there's still so many other ways that we can connect, and people are there to care, and nature is there to care for us, and the universe is there. I want to share one more thing, is like what Sangeeta was saying earlier about independence. So Claude and I wrote something a while back called How to Sponge Off Your Family and Friends and Save the World. So there was, when I was starting out and I started going on a different path, my parents were very upset. They're like, what is all this other stuff? You should stick in your job and make money, and then later on you can do your charity work. And I found that model very, very, very oppressive, and not only oppressive, very stupid. I'm like, you're going to tell me I spent 20 years of my life, polluting the planet, getting people sick, destroying nature, and then I'll build a little cancer hospital and feel good about myself. You know, this doesn't work. There's no logic to this thing, you know. And so I think that that model was something I grew up with, but this generation, this is no longer an ethical model. This is just stupidity to say that we can continue to separate our work, where we earn our money and where we put our money. I don't think this is this kind of bifurcation makes any sense anymore. So what I was saying is I was very hesitant to take money from my parents because I thought, no, they're going to be lecturing me all the time and judging me and trying to control me and all of those things. But at some point I started feeling that, you know, the real work is needed now. You know, we have a limited amount of time and the planet is going in a certain direction. So I told my mother and father one day, I said, look, you know, anyways, when you go from here, you're going to leave whatever you've saved, you're going to leave it for me and my sister. So why don't you give it to us now so we can live freely and we can contribute to the world and do something beautiful. And initially she was like very shocked and put off, but a few more conversations and she started to understand and agree to support our work. So a lot of our initial support of starting Shikshantar and doing a lot of the things over the years has actually come from family and friends. And the biggest thing was to come out of our own, again, ego and embarrassment. How can we ask for help? And so it's such a strange thing. We can go to I've seen people, they want to go to a third party investor and beg them for money, but they're afraid to go to their family and friends and their immediate network and ask. So I would encourage everyone to consider sponging. It's a needed thing for today in the world if we need to, and we need to use, as Sangeeta is saying, we have all kinds of privilege, and we can bring that privilege into play for it's our responsibility, I think, not to deny it, but to bring it into play for changing the game. I think I want to just say couple of things about community. And Sangeeta and they also are trying beautiful models in Oroville. And I think that, you know, there's a model that we were told that you have to be alone, do your own thing, live alone. And I want to challenge that model. I want to say that, you know, one of the most stupid things we brought to India was a nuclear family system. And what we need to think about is how to create, you know, joint family models again. And it doesn't have to be biological. It can be with a whole community of friends who are doing it. I was in Australia a few years ago. I visited a place a friend of mine was organized. 18 families decided to live together. And they're all like white Westerner people, random, but they had a vision. They said, this is so stupid to live individually. 7 or 8 of them were single parents, and they said, no, let's come together. We'll create a community. We'll use less resources. We can really take care of each other. So, you know, this kind of model that if we as we're building our livelihoods to see how can we really reduce our dependency on the money system. And the best way to do that is to start to live in community. The other thing about community I want to say is really to invite us to think about how do we invest more locally. So a lot of the things we've been doing is really to shift. You know, one of my friends talks about we need to move our resources from Wall Street to Main Street. So can we support not only in our work, do our livelihood, but support more local producers, invest in them, support them, build community with them, buy locally from them, and build a whole community. So we've tried to do that in Udaipur as well with organic and with natural cloth and with a Darya Dil Dukan and many different things there. So and I think the community, there's a model that says to us, a framework that says, you know, individual behavior change. So I think what I'm inviting us to think about is individual behavior change is not going to get it done. Community means all kinds of power. So as part of the livelihoods we build is how do we build community. If we're not building community, if we're not building relationships of trust and care and connection in whatever we're doing, it's going to be doomed to fail. In the bigger picture, you'll have done something nice, but it's doomed to fail. The planet is going to be trashed. The last thing in terms of an experiment I want to show, I know I'm going over time, sorry, but I warned Manyata, is that we've done a lot of gift culture events. And I think that I would invite people to think about that. Even this event, you know, like, can we invite, you know, rather than setting a fixed rate, can we create a whole band of different places, different opportunities so people of all different backgrounds can participate. In Udaipur, we helped set up organic store Banyan Roots. So we wanted to make the basic rations. You know, everyone thinks organic is so expensive. This is the biggest nonsense in the world, that anyone who tells you organic is more expensive must be taking some serious drugs. We try to say that what we can do is the basic ration should be affordable to everyone. If your model or your building is not accessible and affordable to everyone, there's a problem with it. You know, your masala should be affordable. And there were certain things that you can then, like if you make biscuits or you make some other things, those can be charged more, some more specialized things which can help to balance your costs. So we need to be much more creative in the kinds of models we create, because if we don't have accessibility, if it's only for the rich, the models we create are going to be, again, they'll feed into the same system. So I think just as in closing, there's a lot more I want to share, but one thing I wanted to say is that I'm very inspired. There's a book by Gandhiji, somebody wrote on Gandhiji called Learning from Gandhi. And in that, basically, it featured that Gandhiji had like 30 different careers in his lifetime, not just a lawyer, but he was a nurse, he was a cobbler, carpenter, so many different things. So I think this idea that you have to choose one livelihood in your life and that's the only thing you have to do is probably, Sangeeta, I know, has so many different talents. I've tried to also develop many skills. So I invite you to get out of this trap that somebody says you have to do only one thing. Probably what we'll have to do as we cobble together our livelihoods is to develop many different skills. And I think that's beautiful because it helps us expand ourselves and our, you know, there's nobody, I don't think any of us have come just to do one thing in the world. The second thing is that on this journey, we are all hypocrites. And there's no purity, and it's okay. Sometimes, you know, I remember in the past really beating up on myself, saying I'm not perfect, I'm not doing it. And I think I would invite everyone to hold the things with gentleness and care. You know, this journey is tough. We're all somehow stuck in, and it's like a quicksand we're stuck in. And so sometimes we get a foot out and sometimes we get stuck further. And so the idea of, again, community is how we can hold each other with care and gentleness. And even the people who are involved in deadlihoods, how can we hold them with love and care? Because that's the kind of world I would like to see that we build. And the last thing I just want to say is that real wealth is, for me, is really about finding money. The money system is not going to give us real security or real care or real safety or real respect or real connection. So real wealth is actually, real livelihoods are going to be things that build these things where we feel real care and connection and respect. I would invite you to join us in this journey from a model that is promoting scarcity and greed to one where we can enter into gratitude and generosity and creativity. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manish. Uh, and also, I think on that note, I would also like to say that this entire livelihood is possible because of community and not because of money. So, just to add that, of course, money will support, help, but it's not dependent. So, the idea of the entire event which we tried to host for you is on the community and gratitude and love which people have for this. And now we'll quickly move to the next panel.
I would like
And
to share just a thought,
yes, Sangeeta.
just a final thought that I was inspired to share after listening to Manish. Thank you. That was just so much, like many of you have shared on the chat, so much to reflect on. We need to look at this at many levels, at the systemic, at the larger game that we're all being fond of, or that we want to become, shapers of, depending on how we make decisions. At the level of community, how we want to shape our lives individually and collectively. I want to end with zooming into the building blocks of this whole large experiment, which is individuals. I want to leave with a thought of there's just so much focus on settling down, and in families, like this whole conversation around livelihoods is towards some notion of laying down. And people with gray hairs who have lived many, many years, they still keep talking the same lie, that it is an illusion, especially more and more in today's time. So many things changing. What does it really mean to settle down? So I want to leave you all with a thought. I think the real work that we need to do is move our focus settling down to settling within. As each of us really finds, get closer and closer to understanding who we really are, why we are here, where we are in our own journey of life, and feel settled within. I think the more and more things will start aligning themselves and falling in place. So that's the thought I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we make a move. Yes. Manita, are we ready for the panel session, or we need to transition a little bit of a, do you want to play a 30-second music so that we feel that we are moving towards the next thing?
Sure. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, we were just able to give a 30-second break because we need to move to the next segment, which is the panel dialogue, where you get to meet the speakers of the day and hear a little bit about them and their journey. Before we go into that part, I'm just going to take 1 minute to share the OST, the live calendar, with people who are joining us for the first time today. So please bear with me for a second. So if you go to our website, this is our website. There is a live calendar option over here, like you can see. This is the live calendar option. And when you click on it, you will be redirected to this page, which is the calendar, where you will find all the sessions of the day. So whichever session you want to go for, you have to come to this calendar, click on it, and you can use this link or the meeting ID and password to join that session. So whenever you need to join a session, please refer to this calendar. It will be helpful to you. The link will be in the chat box as well as in your emails and on WhatsApp, so you can use that. And now we can move on to the speakers of the day. Let me quickly start. So the first speaker of the day today is Vinod from Journeys for Meaning. I will just get to this, sorry. So Vinod is a systems thinker and facilitator and an entrepreneurship coach. He founded Journeys with Meaning in 2007 with the aim of helping create conscious leaders and citizens through transformative learning journeys. We welcome Vinod here to share about his work with Journeys with Meaning, as well as what made him choose that and how he got here. So over to you, Vinod.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Great. Thanks so much, Manyata. So without wasting any time, I'll just jump right into it. So good evening, everybody, and thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to all of us. I just caught the fag end of what Manish and Sangeeta were talking about, and it sounded really interesting. I wish I joined in a little bit earlier. But anyway, like moving forward, so basically, Manyata has already introduced me as somebody who runs an organization called Journeys with Meaning. Journeys with Meaning is something, it's a social enterprise that I started about 15 years ago now. It's part of a long journey of about 20 years where I did some other work first as part of the organization, which also I co-started with some friends. And so what we really do at Journeys with Meaning is, even though it might sound very much like a travel organization, it's really an environmental education, environmental conservation organization. And we use travel as a medium through which we talk about environment, talk about sustainability, talk about climate change and its impacts in India, talk about a whole range of other issues, some of which you would have already been exposed to over the last couple of days. So really, it's about taking people out of their comfort zones and going to places like Ladakh or Meghalaya or Assam, the Sundarbans, places that we normally wouldn't travel to so easily. And just trying to spend some time there with the local community, with the local organization, so that we could learn about 4 disconnects. So broadly, like I'll put it very simplistically, what we think is happening in the world today is because of 4 disconnects. So the first disconnect is between humans and nature. I think we'd all agree on that, particularly like people living in cities. The second disconnect is between urban humans and other human cultures. So we are very cut off from like places like Ladakh and Meghalaya and all of that, where even though there are fellow Indians, we rarely sort of share a culture with them. And I would say that we have more in common with people, in other countries maybe, with whom we share some sort of aspects of culture. Then there's a disconnect between our head and our heart, where instead of having that balance, we are kind of now living more from here and less from here. And the final disconnect is between the actions that we take in our everyday life and the consequences they lead to. So many of these consequences are things that we don't get to see. They're not very visible, and they happen to other people in other places at different times, and therefore we are unable to see that. And the learning journeys that we offer are really a way for people to understand this and to reconnect with all of these different spaces and different values. So that's in brief about Journeys with Meaning. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I got into it in the first place. So 2 instances come to mind. One was in 2002 when I visited Kashmir for the first time. And as I entered Kashmir, it was still very much a troubled zone, a lot of curfews and things like that. And there was absolutely no tourism happening at the time. So when I got there, a friend of a friend, I was staying with a friend, and he took me out to meet some of his friends. And somebody asked me, "Acha, aap India se aaye hain?" And I got outraged because for me at that time, I felt Kashmir was very much an integral part of India. And that was the kind of perspective that I was going in with. And I was reading a book at the time, and I realized some passages from that book stayed with me. And the passages were about identity. So when I read these passages about identity, I realized that I wasn't actually listening to them from the perspective of being a human. I was listening to them from the perspective of being an Indian, which is one of my many identities, and it didn't need to be my primary one. And so I made a conscious decision that the next day onwards, I would let go of my Indianness for a little while and listen to somebody as a fellow human being. And when I did that, I started to do that, I realized that a lot of the people that I encountered were able to open up to me and share their feelings, like what was going on, their angst and their, like kind of their anger really with India, with the state of India. And I realized they were angry with the government. But what really opened up was a very beautiful space for dialogue. And we were able to work our way past that initial like resistance. And we are very close friends till today. And like we still like, go and stay with each other and all of that. And the second incident that happened was in 2006, incidentally, where Manish was also part of that same trip. We were both attending a conference in Ladakh on localization. And while we were there, I think the conference had just gotten over and there was a huge cloudburst. And Ladakh was completely, blocked off. Both the roads in and out of Ladakh got washed away. And we were all stuck over there for a while and had no idea like what to do about it. I took the opportunity to just meet a lot of the local communities, spend time with them, understanding why a high altitude desert region was experiencing so much rainfall, which shouldn't have been happening in the first place. And got to know, so much about how my actions back in the city, because when we talk about climate change, it's not really caused by people living in these places. Their lifestyles are very sustainable. And it was our lifestyle back in the city which had led to this issue in the first place. And so that hit me very hard. And I said, okay, I'm fairly well read, I'm well traveled. I keep, meeting a lot of interesting people, and I had no idea about this. So imagine a lot of other people back home who are caught up in this daily like busyness of whatever like they're doing. And a lot of them are also part of the livelihoods that we just heard about. And so therefore they don't have the time and the space to understand these issues or even to know about these issues. So I took it upon myself to start something where I could get people introduced to these ideas and open up a conversation. And that basically turned out to be Journeys with Meaning, where we actually would go to these places and spend time understanding a lot of these issues. So in short, these two experiences kind of drove me towards this particular, way of engaging with people on these issues. And I'd say like one major personal learning for me through these years is that more and more when I travel to these places, no matter how diverse they are in terms of culture, one thing stands out for me, that how everything is interconnected, and a lot of these interconnections turn out to be very like sort of subtle or almost invisible to the eye. And you need to really look for them, dig for them. That's when you can see them. And so for me, like that's what jumps out, that if everything on this planet is so interconnected, why aren't we able to see it? And the learning journeys also have emerged to be a way for people to understand how interconnections work on this planet and what they lead to. And so like, since we are also on the topic of livelihoods, I'd like to share a little bit about what it means to me particularly. So for me, livelihoods is a way for me to, so based on what I just shared, that understanding how everything is interconnected, that forms the core of my philosophy, the core of how I live my life. And essentially, if I would take that into like, into the main, as the main context, what does that mean in my everyday life? It means that I need to be contributing something which is useful to the planet, right? So something that is actually helping the planet in whatever ways, whether it's an idea or a concept that I develop and share with people, or whether it's a product or a service, something that contributes to the planet without causing any harm to anybody or to anything. Right? So essentially to me, a livelihood is a way of being on this planet, supporting the planet as and in turn, while the planet supports me. So that's really what it means to me. And I'll very quickly sum it up with a quote from one of my favorite thinkers, Buckminster Fuller, very prolific inventor and writer. So his words are, make the world work for 100% of humanity in the shortest possible time, through spontaneous cooperation, and without ecological offense or the disadvantage of anyone. So it's a very, succinct statement where he says, make the world work for everybody, 100% of humanity, and add all other living beings too, without causing any ecological damage and without causing any offense to anybody. So really, like that's what Journeys with Meaning has been all about. And before Journeys with Meaning, the other things that I did. So my like working life, I would say, is kind of reflected in these words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinod, for sharing. That was beautiful. And if you have any questions for Vinod, please save them for the deep dive and join his session. With that, we will move to the next speaker of the day, who is Chetna. I'll just take a minute to introduce her. Chetna is a natural birth specialist. She runs the birth home in Bangalore, which is a midwifery birth center. I would like to welcome Chetna to share about what got you interested in this space and just a little bit about your journey here.
Thank you, Manyata, and really excited to be here with all of you. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
All right. So what do? I mean, the poster, of course, said natural birth specialist, but really I'm a birth worker. That's how I would like to describe myself. I am a student midwife. So I'm aspiring to get into full-fledged midwifery, and I also have the center, the birth home, which started last year. What we do there is that we offer midwifery care for anyone who'd like to opt for it. So, way back when I became pregnant, and I was looking for options. So, like I think most mainstream, the most mainstream option is to just go to a doctor, and then they give you a list of tests and scans, and then you get that done. And I went down that route, but something didn't sit right with me. It felt very artificial. It didn't feel like, I didn't like being treated as a patient, right? I wasn't ill. People who are pregnant aren't ill because pregnancy is a normal, natural body function. So it's like, eating a meal and digesting it. So why, you don't have to run to a hospital or a doctor every time you eat a meal, right? So then I started exploring options, and I was very fortunate to come across a friend who had, given birth a few years before I did, in a freestanding birthing center. So, all these words I'm throwing out there, freestanding, natural, and all that. But that doesn't mean that, you don't have the medical care that you actually need. Because yes, while it is a normal, natural, physiological body function, it's also something that needs the support and the care to make sure that, the birthing person as well as the baby are doing fine. So that's something that just struck a chord with me. And where I was living, I was in the US that time. So I started looking for midwives who could, become my partner in taking care of myself and my baby. And I went ahead and I, gave birth in a freestanding birthing center, very much like the birth home that we have created now in Bangalore. So I'm very proud and happy about the fact that we have this option for people in Bangalore. And of course, anybody else can also access it. They just have to move in temporarily and stay in Bangalore for that. But really, midwifery model of care, to put it very simply, is that it is a very individualized model of care, where we believe the core philosophy is that birth is a physiological function. That means body function, which we are like we have the genetic coding in our bodies and in our minds to go through it. Like, I don't know how many of you have, have pets or have worked with animals. It's when we see an animal giving birth, like cats or dogs. So what do? They go find a nice little safe corner where they're not going to be disturbed, and they're going to give birth in that space. So really, I think humans are no different. We are animals at the end of the day. So we just need that kind of a safe, secure environment with the right kind of support, right? So if you were to see a mainstream hospital today, there are a lot of subtle and not so subtle human right violations that take place. And there is, sometimes there's no dignity, there is no, informed consent, nobody takes permission before they touch you. So all those things, that's the problem with the whole healthcare system in general. But specifically when you're giving birth, it becomes even more of a challenge for someone who has the full ability and capability to do to birth on their own terms, but there are a lot of interventions that are done. And I'm sure a lot of people who have already given birth in this forum will attest to the fact, especially if they chose the hospital medicalized model of care, right? So what inspired me, just experiencing my own birth and being able to have that kind of a care. And it may seem like very almost elitist, this model that we have created at the birth home. If you go check our website, we have a huge house, and we have all these facilities, and typically our clients are people who are well-to-do. But the idea is also to break down all these structures and systems in place and make it more a community-based midwifery practice. So a midwife is somebody who is skilled and trained and is a medical professional, right? But the thing is that what a midwife does is they are experts in normal birth, right? So when birth starts straying away from the normal path, they do stuff to bring it back to normalcy. And if that is not possible, then we have all this modern day obstetrical care to rely on and to use. But does every person who is pregnant, do they need to see an obstetrician? No, not needed at all. So midwifery really should be the mainstream model of care, and that is something that we are striving to do. And in the deep dive session, I'll hopefully be able to get into more specifics as to how I can get to do that. So one major personal learning in this journey has been just the sheer power of the birthing people. It amazes me every single time. It inspires me to do better. It inspires me to stay, watch, learn, stay away. We are very hands-off in our center, which means that we have a whole spectrum of care. So if you want help, we are there for you. But if you can do it by yourself, which you totally can, we are there to support you to do that as well. So we have had about 10 people come, and since we are a new center, we have had so far 10 people come and give birth with us. And many more have signed up for the next few months. So it's very exciting to be in this line of work. So definitely makes me come alive. I love talking about it. It really, because so many choices in my life have been going against the grain, sort of. I didn't send my children to school for the past 9.5 years. So there was a lot of talking with family about why you're not sending your children to school and stuff like that. But that was just the kind of lifestyle I chose. I chose to give birth not in a hospital but in a birthing center. I chose to breastfeed my children for 10 years. So I have 2 children, and one fed for 7 years, the other breastfed for 5 years. So we practiced what is called as natural term weaning. So we let the children decide when they want to wean off breast milk. So it is kind of just tied into the way of life, right? The way we are living. And birth matters, right? Birth is what defines a lot of what we are and what we become, even if it is not very discernible, even if it's in very subtle ways, right? So I'm really happy that we have this platform in terms of livelihoods to kind of share. There's a lot of potential now with this particular session that's there. I think going forward, there's a lot of potential for dialoguing and to get into more specifics and to brainstorm together as to what we can do to become, to make midwifery the mainstream model of care for everyone who wants to give birth. So yeah, I think this is pretty much what I wanted to share. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chetna. That was very, very inspiring and interesting. And if you people would want to know more about midwifery as a career, please do join Chetna's deep dive, which will happen, and you can ask her questions and learn more from her. So thank you, Chetna. The next speaker I would like to invite is Preeti David. Preeti David is an editor, a journalist, and a teacher. She leads the team at Pari Education. She believes that journalism is about being a responsible citizen. I would like to invite you, Preeti, to share your interesting journey and a little bit about your work at Pari as well.
Thank you, Manyata. Thank you, Pratiksha and Prachi, for inviting me. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. All right. So I'm a rural reporter. I write for the People's Archive of Rural India, which is an archive. It's an online journal in which we write about rural issues because there's just not enough coverage about rural issues in mainstream journalism. So P. Sainath, who's the founder of PARI, set up PARI 6 years ago. And the idea is that we bring stories about rural India into everyone's consciousness. Now, why do we do this? Because we believe that the everyday lives of everyday people are fascinating, are something that we need to learn about. These are the people who grow our food. These are the people who make our craft. These are the people who live where our resources come from, our energy, our water, and so on. How is it that we don't know enough about their lives? And we owe it to ourselves and to our consciousness of our own country to know a little bit more about where 60% of our country lives, what kind of work do they do, what livelihoods do they have, what lives do they lead. So I write on Adivasi issues and also the other part of what I do is PARI Education, which is a 2-year-old project in PARI, in which we it came very organically from PARI. I do have 10 years of teaching experience. So this is the point where I have to tell you that I am 54 years old. I know I don't look it, which is why I need to say it. I have a 30-year career behind me between teaching and journalism, right? So in PARI, what I do is I speak in colleges, universities, schools, from middle to high school to masters to bachelors. I speak to people about the need to learn about rural India, what is happening in rural India. And the reason that I do this is because I want young Indians to know that there is a country out there outside of the little urban bubble that they live in between their little phone and themselves, that there's an India out there which you need to know about. And I come back to the point about being educated Indians. We are also very entitled Indians. And we are the people who are making the policies. We are the people who are, defining government. We are the people whose voices are heard. It is incumbent upon us in a democracy to actually be able to open the discussion wider and not just keep this, urban English educated conversation going, right? And if we don't know about these people and we don't know about their lives and so on, then it becomes difficult for us to have a worldview which is outside of ours. So I teach young students that there is a lot that you can learn from a farmer who grows rice. There's a lot that you can learn from a person who uses bamboo. People in rural India have more than one occupation. How do they do that? Isn't that amazingly skillful? And they lead very sustainable lives. You and I can't enter a toilet without toilet paper. How do people live in which they have to travel 4 hours to get 2 buckets of water? Who are these people? Why do they live these lives? And if they give up these lives and come to live in our cities, they are the watchmen, they are the dhobi, they are our cook, and so on. But we never stop to ask them that what was your life like where you lived or your parents lived? What did you do there? What do you know about growing maybe some, unknown seed of rice which nobody else knows about? What is that craft? You know that many craftsmen of Kanchipuram, famous for its saris, are driving auto rickshaws because it's no longer viable to be a Kanchipuram weaver. So these are livelihoods which are dying out in rural India. And at PARI, what we want to do is we want to document them before they completely die out, right? The reason why I speak in schools is because I want students to gain respect, to gain an understanding, to gain an awareness of people who are mining coal for you, in back-breaking conditions so that you can put the air conditioner on in your house in Bombay or wherever you live, right? We want students to begin to have empathy, not pity. We don't want, children to say, oh, he's from a village, we need to pity him, or, we want them to have empathy, to have understanding, right? Okay, so then I'm going to now backtrack a little bit and tell you a little bit about my journey and how I came here to be here. I started, I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I did humanities in high school. I did economics as an undergraduate degree, and I was very sure I wanted to be a journalist and a writer. So I applied a couple of places. I didn't go to journalism school, and I started with the Economic Times on the desk, you know, figuring out English, paras, and so on and so forth. And you learn a lot at the desk, right? Very boring job, honestly. But I do believe that when you're 22, 23, it's not a bad thing to have a boring job because you actually do learn a lot. So I hung in there. And I learned a lot in the first few years that I was working. I moved into feature writing. I decided news was not for me. I like long form. So I began to write features in the Economic Times. And then I moved into television. I've been a television anchor. I've been a television reporter for different channels. And then I decided to move into publishing. So I moved into publishing. I was a magazine editor, founding editor of a magazine, a very niche magazine in business journalism. And all this while I'd just been doing business journalism, you know, nothing outside of that. And then I got an offer to edit a book from the Crafts Council of India. And that is when I tasted blood, because I said, wow, this is a book about stonecraft in India. This is where I want to be. These are the stories I want to be writing. This is almost 8 years after I had started my career as a journalist. I knew that human interest stories were of interest to me, but I just didn't know how to get there. So Crafts Council of India book was a great eye-opener to me, but it's not like immediately I jumped into, you know, craft writing. No, it didn't work that way. I jumped into teaching because I've always wanted to be a teacher, and I was offered a job to teach economics in a school which was starting 11 and 12. My son was going to that school, and I said, yes, why not? Let me give it a shot. And I absolutely loved teaching. I'd anyway been teaching young people how to write. I had many trainees who I had trained. I'd, you know, been a book editor. I mean, I've done a lot of teaching of writing. So teaching economics was not really difficult for me. I loved the subject. Then I moved into teaching English. And that's again where I found that that's what I really like to do. I love teaching English. It's a blank canvas. You teach it, there's so much you can do with it. And so I taught English till 2015. So I had a 10-year teaching career, and then I came back into journalism, and I said, what is the kind of journalism I want to do? I don't want to be writing about business journalism, not my cup of tea. I knew that I had tasted blood with Crafts Council, so I wanted to start a craft magazine. Everybody said, yes, it's a fantastic idea, but I'm not a business person. So as much as I know my strengths, I also know my weaknesses. My strengths are that I have to be really interested in what I'm doing, which is writing, collecting information, researching, reporting. I do not like the business side of things. So there was no way I could, you know, start a magazine unless somebody's going to be the publisher. And then I met Sainath. And Pari had started actually, and I had written to them once, volunteering, no answer. I wrote to them the second time, again, no answer. But I'm obviously, you can make out I'm the tenacious type. So I went for a talk which Sainath was giving, and I waited to meet him at the end. And he said, oh, I'm really sorry, we're really overburdened, and please write to me on this mail. And I wrote to him, and things moved very quickly after that. He gave me a project to do on languages. I did some research on that. Then I decided that I wanted to start reporting. And I said, okay, now looking around me, where do I go? Which part of rural India do I want to go to? I don't speak Tamil, but I did decide to start reporting in the Nilgiris because I had a few contacts there. And you know, in journalism, contacts is everything because it gets your foot in the door. And subsequently, I've traveled to Madhya Pradesh, to Bastar in Chhattisgarh. I have traveled to the Nilgiris, of course, to Dharmapuri district. I have written from many, many different places. I've had the most fabulous experiences being a rural reporter. And you cannot be a rural reporter unless you have a sense of adventure. I do have a sense of adventure. I trek every year in the Himalayas. I've done Everest Base Camp. So I'm also a dancer, and I must say this to anyone who's really young over here on this and who's listening, that when I was 25 or 26, I had left Economic Times for a short while because I got an offer to be a correspondent. And the editor there asked me, he said, why are you leaving? So I said, I'm leaving. I said, I'm leaving. He said, but you know, if you stay on, you can be editor by the time you're 29. And I said, no, I don't want to be editor at 29. I want to be a dancer and a writer. So when I was a teacher, people said, you know, if you stay on, you'll be the principal of the school. I said, no, but I don't want, I'm not interested in being the principal of the school. I just love teaching English. And so these kind of things have never really attracted me. Like, as you can see, I moved from writing to editing to television to teaching and back to journalism. I always do things which I really enjoy. I'm passionately interested in what I do. And I have a lot of freedom. I'm lucky that I have bosses who give me complete freedom to mess up, to screw up, and then to, you know, whatever. But anyway, that's the exciting part of what I do. I think I kind of covered it. So yeah, so I just want to say this, a livelihoods thing is, for me, is basically living life and doing my job on my terms, right? Yes, I understand that it requires a certain amount of financial security. And in the beginning, I did work, like I told you, I did do very boring work sometimes, but I did manage to have financial security. But I do know that you have to cut your cloth according to your, cut your coat according to your cloth. And it's important that you decide whether you want to suit your lifestyle to your pay packet or your pay packet to your lifestyle. I mean, there is something to be said to that. So I'm going to end with that, and I hope to catch you all later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Preeti. That was just one of the most fascinating and exciting journeys I've ever heard. I was smiling throughout. I also a perfect example of how you don't have to have a livelihood. You can do so many different things, as Shubham pointed out in the chat. So that was really, really fascinating. Thank you. And if you want to know more about Pari and the work Preeti does there and journalism, a career in journalism, please join the deep dive with Preeti at 6 o'clock. And I would now like to invite our last speaker, who is Dinesh. Is he here? Because I think he was having some...
Yes, I'm here. Funnily, I don't remember the last time when we lost power in Pondi town. When the session started, everything went off. So the power is back. I'm just logging in.
Sure. So I'll just quickly...
Okay, my phone is about to die, so... Just a minute.
Yes.
In the meantime, I'll just introduce you to everyone and then we can hand over to you.
Yeah, okay.
So Dinesh is the founder of Samarpanam Farmers Market in Pondicherry, which is where he lives as well. He is deeply connected to his suppliers and to the farmers that he works with, and he has a personal connection with all of them. And we would love to hear more about Dinesh and what inspired you to start Samarpanam. So over to you, Dinesh, if you are here. Yes.
Yeah.
He was rejoining, no? That's right.
Yeah, everyone just consider it as a 30-second breather as the power gods give Dinesh back his access to internet. We'll wait patiently.
Yes. Oh, yes, he's coming. I'm just...
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Clear?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I hope the power doesn't go off again. And we have a good internet connection also. Wow. So good evening. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you. Great.
Okay, yeah. So, Dinesh from Pondicherry. So, where do I start? Okay, fine. I passed out of college, actually ran away from college in the year 2013. Born and brought up in Pondicherry. Father is a full-time farmer, like all his life. He has been a farmer all his life. And when I decided to leave college, right from the second year of college, after I finished first year of college, I was thinking, what will I do in life? Already, like I was too restless to, I couldn't wait for the next 3 years. I was thinking, oh, what will I do with life? And me and one of my favorite professor together sorted out that engineering is not my thing. So I managed to stay in college for the next 2 years, and last year I was too restless. I couldn't wait to go explore and see what I should do. Then I left college. For some reason, I know deep inside me, when I was in college, I wanted to do either of these things, teaching or farming. Because when I was in college, I used to teach for my juniors. When I was in the final year, I used to teach for all the 3 years of junior, like the first year, second year, and the third year. So I had this fun of interacting with students, and as I mentioned, my father being a farmer all his life and growing up on and off in a farm, I thought these two things made a lot of sense for me. So I was thinking about money, I was thinking about earning. So I was thinking, okay, what makes sense to me? Okay, fine, I earn something. I should do something which makes sense to me. And whatever I earn, how much ever I earn must make total sense to me at the end of the day. So I started roaming. I was traveling for a few years. The first few years of my traveling, like I started traveling in 2014. I met Sridhar in 2015 in Delhi. I'm happy to see Sridhar after a very long time here. So I explored a lot of things, started meeting farmers, started staying with farmers in the farm, going to alternative schools. A lot of such things happened. I was actively involved in politics for some time. I was doing some water work with some villages around Pondicherry. 2016, I decided I'll start with waste management. I did a complete professional waste management course for 6 months, and we kickstarted a project for Pondicherry when Dr. Kiran Bedi assumed office. And after 6 months, I realized that you try to do something with the government, you waste all your energies. So I had a lot of learnings. So then there was a question about, okay, where should I start now? I don't want to waste my energy. I want to start somewhere. Enough of roaming around, and I want to get into action. So then I started thinking, okay, what is the resource which I have? Where should I start? So we have land. My father is a farmer, as I mentioned. So I said, I dropped a big bomb at home saying I'm going to farm, which is a very unpleasant thing for a family who has already been involved in farming to hear. And I had issues with the relationship between me and my parents for a few years. I mean, it's still continuing, but it has gotten better. So I did my first crop. in 2016, I started I fought for my part of land, and I got like 2 acres. And I started, my first crop was moong and urad. When I harvested it, I started marketing it, trying to reach out to organic stores. This bargaining and people not valuing what you do, these things were very disturbing for me. So later I decided I'll market my own produce, because this being my hometown, I know a lot of people, so I thought people will support me. I started marketing my produce, and local organic farmers pushed me towards marketing their produce also when I started doing this work. I didn't realize that I was running a business for like close to a year after starting to do this work. I was handling a bunch of, like the product range was very less than 10 items, my produce and a few other farmers who are very accessible by road in less than an hour time. Pondicherry, Viluppuram, Kadaloor, neighboring districts of Tamil Nadu and border districts of Pondicherry. Then after 1.5 years, I realized that a lot of energy is going into the store. The store and the farm has become a separate entity now. It's like I was doing work of 3-4 people in a day. So then I realized, okay, farm and store is a different entity. It needs different energy. The same kind of energy in a different direction it needs. So I thought I'll focus on one thing initially, and that didn't happen. I'm still working on both of it. I couldn't. I don't know how to stop it, like, because it's still very exciting to do new things every year when it comes to farming and the store, meeting people, marketing experiences. So what we do is we connect with farmers, especially small farmers, organic farmers, within a 100-kilometer radius from Pondicherry, where we can reach in like 2-3 hours. We do farm visits regularly, at least 2-3 farm visits in a week. We work with communities like Oroville, cafes in the town, other communities in Oroville. We do seed exchange with communities, both giving and taking. We help inorganic farmers who are interested in organic conversion. We help them go through that process. So to cut it short, the next question was about what was my personal learning. I don't know, there's so much to mention when it comes to personal learning, because I learned a lot. There's no personal life. I don't know how to separate personal life and work life. Since 2-3 years, I'm still finding a way to do it. But business has helped me a lot in my inner transformation, and I should say overall it has improved my discipline as an individual in general. Like overall, the food, the way I take care of myself, everything has changed. That's one major thing which comes to my mind when you ask this question of what learning I had. And yes, thank you. And what does a livelihood mean to me? So the initial idea of starting the work with farming is the academics which I dreamt of. I didn't get it when I was in college. I needed a wholesome educational experience, and I think land is a very land is the base resource for everything. You can build anything on land. You can build anything, like you can grow food, you can literally build anything on land. So understanding and creating this relationship with the land and working with the community around, I feel it's very important. I feel this is where I need to start. If in fact, I would say I'm educating myself. I'm creating my own curriculum of this wholesome education, which I dream of, to live as a complete human being. So I decided I'll work with land. I'll start working with food, and obviously farming is not an individual activity, it's a community activity. You engage people. That's another sort of politics for me, which I'm going through every day. So yeah, being in relationship with soil, water, people around, by working with them and serving good food, putting up with all the difference in opinions, and still trying to do things. So I think food is the base. I believe that it will give me a wholesome, building a foundation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dinesh. Thank you for that. And so Dinesh's session will be around creating organic stores and becoming an organic distributor. So if you would like to know more about that, then please do join his deep dive session. So we are at 5:52 and our deep dives start at 6 p.m. in the different rooms. So maybe we can all take a 7-minute screen break. I would invite all the speakers to join their room so you can meet your moderators, and if you need to just talk to them or anything like that. And for the participants, we'll reopen the rooms at 6 o'clock. So see you all in the deep dives. Thank you so much.